thanks so much for coming to our panel. We're going to be plugging PAX Unplugged backend by talking about virtual tabletops as a creative nexus. My name is Matt. I've previously made YouTube videos about how to use TTRPG software like VTTs, Dungeon Draft, and all that stuff. I also work for Foundry VTT as a content developer, and I'll be the moderator for today's chat. We've got a set of fantastic panelists today around this decidedly not virtual table, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Alex.
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex. I am otherwise known as the map cartographer. I make maps for Patreon creator, and the maps that I do are predominantly made for Foundry VTT. They can be used on other VTTs, but the stuff that I try to do is getting the best out of Foundry.
I'm Max, also known as Humperdinck the Warlock. And I'm the writer for Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting, which was on Kickstarter recently this summer. And I'm getting it on Foundry.
Thank you. I like your energy. Yeah. I am Cody Sandrowski. I am a developer at Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I've been working here for about 8 months now, and it's been great.
Hey folks, I'm Andrew Clayton. I am the original creator of Foundry Virtual Tabletop, although we have a wonderful team now, many more folks than just myself. And it's been a super thrill to see folks at PAX and get to connect in person. So thank you all for coming to our panel.
I see that was an applause. There you go. Andrew gets the applause. It was saving up for you.
That was for all of us.
Today we're going to talk about what some of the benefits of a virtual tabletop are, what it's like to make content for a VTT, how that enables a whole new type of storytelling, and then we'll throw to all of you for some audience questions. But before we do that, we wanted to give anybody here who doesn't know what a VTT is a quick 1-minute primer on how they can help your game. So everyone who's played in person knows the pain of printing out a map across a bunch of pages, cutting it out, making sure you put it together in the right order, and hoping that eventually when you get to play that the fan doesn't blow it all away, or worse, drawing everything out on a square-by-square mat with a kind of questionable artistic ability. With a virtual tabletop, it can be a little bit easier. All you have to do is use a laptop, a TV screen, or have everybody on their own computers connecting to your game. To show them a map, all you have to do is upload it to your VTT and share the scene with everyone. Another common pain point is making sure you're not showing your players more than you want them to see. We've all shifted around stacks of paper to slowly reveal areas as our players explore, and then scramble to be able to put a token down when they encounter an enemy. With a VTT, you can place everything down in advance, configure walls, and let the software handle all that tricky stuff for you. As a GM, you can see everything, but as a player, you can only see what your character should see. You can even move yourself around the map until you stumble into some place where you're not supposed to be. And when you're using regular pen and paper, you have to pay attention to your spell slot usage to keep track of where you put your wall of fire, and inevitably need to borrow dice and track the map to figure out how much damage you've done. With a VTT, all those things can be tracked for you, and there's no map to mess up. They can also do a lot more than that, but those are some of the things we're going to get into in this panel. So without further ado, let's get to asking our panelists some questions. And I think setting up with a bunch of features for a VTT, the best question goes to Andrew. So as the founder of Foundry VTT, there's probably no better person to ask than what features does a virtual tabletop provide GMs and content creators alike to tell more engaging and immersive stories?
Thanks, Matt. There's a lot that I could highlight, but I think that having your games in a digital format can really challenge you to prepare and to think differently about how to engage and challenge your players, how to help them think about collaborative storytelling. You have a lot of tools that you can use to show in addition to telling. I think narration as the game master is always important, but being able to give your players visual cues, auditory cues. There's so much that can be engaged, secrets that it's easy to hand out to one player but not others. Everyone loves a whisper, but if you can't be in person, or being able to rely on the digital tool set for that is super powerful. And it can really speed up storytelling by taking away a lot of the bookkeeping that can slow down roleplay. And so being able to automate things that take take away from thinking about describing your actions or think about describing the situation that you're in or giving voice to your character. These are things that a VTT can really help you with. And then on the content creation side, I think it allows creators like Max and Alex and others to think about challenging people to experience things differently than what you would typically do with just a print book, right? Because you can organize your content differently. You can have non-linear paths for experiencing content. You can present branching choices. You can present content that flows more organically as the players explore. And you can give them challenges that engage them on multiple levels. And so, you know, if you're a very active game master with lots of voices, with lots of clever narration and descriptive stuff, that doesn't go away. If anything, you can sort of enhance that by mixing it with some of the digital tools that you can use for preparing your game. It also gives you a lot of ability to react spontaneously to things that are unexpected. I think having all of that content ready to go in a digital format lets you really react to the inevitable of going off the rails a bit. It's a mixed thing because sometimes you feel the pressure that, oh, if we're playing digitally, we have to prepare everything digitally. It's not an all or nothing thing. And I think having a mix of tools, it gives you more ways to respond and it gives you more flexibility in terms of letting your story evolve in response to players' choices. I could speak a lot more, but I'll probably stop there, and when we get to audience questions, feel free to push me on any of that a bit further.
I know, Alex, you started your career with, or your Patreon at least, with a focus on VTT, and I was curious why you wanted to focus on them and what features you've been able to take advantage of while putting together maps and encounters and stuff that can make stuff more engaging for players and GMs.
It's a really long question, right?
Oh yeah. I hope you can remember all 4 pieces. There will be a quiz at the end.
So I've predominantly played VTT more than I have at the table. I think me, like the majority of people that do kind of drift into VTT, do it for the same reasons a lot of the time. Mine was that the friend base that I had, who were collective nerds like I were, they were spread across the world. I met them through MMORPG guilds, and so then when we wanted to play, the only way to do it was virtually. You know, you've got friends in America, you've got friends all across Europe. I didn't have anybody that I knew in my real life, not my virtual tabletop life, that played D&D or tabletop RPGs at all. So virtual tabletop was kind of my only option to play. So then when I started making content for it, I make maps. So maps can be printed, so it can be, you know, they can be played physically anyway. And every time I design a map, I have to keep that in mind. But because I am such a big fan of Foundry, because I've used other VTTs, and then when I found out about Foundry, the tool sets that it has, it is things like the improved walling. It's little things like, you know, you've got dynamic walls, but you've got doors. You know, the lighting system and everything that you've got in that, it enhances the map. And by doing that, it, as Andrew was saying, it enhances the storytelling elements to a different degree. You know, if you're playing at the table and you've got a secret room, you know, your players probably know that it's there, because if it's being covered by a black piece of paper, it's like, they're all going to be really meta about saying, kind of floating around, I'm going to make that perception check, looking for a secret room, investigation, sorry. And then they fail, and then the other player's like, you know what, I think I'm going to have a look as well. VTTs kind of takes that all away, and it really comes down to how you set the map up. With Foundry, there's some amazing core things, such as, you know, if you've got, you know, the walling, you can have the doors that are a secret door. The players that are playing it looks like a wall to them, but with a right click, the DM goes, oh, you found a door, and it goes into another room. And so it's just that flow that works with storytelling is really beneficial.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to play, like if you want to do secret doors, if you want to do things in a different way. Cody, I know you've built a lot of different ways that people get to play in virtual tabletops, whether that's like game systems or modules. How does a VTT support different styles of play than you would normally see with just pen and paper?
Yeah, one of the big benefits there's things you can't do in person that you can do when powered by software. So a big difference between like American or European players, they like top-down style tokens and maps. You know, you see it from a bird's eye view, but Japanese style players like these backgrounds. You see the sides of buildings and such. And they like seeing their characters from the side. One of the modules I built is a visual novel style add-on, and it enables them to talk as their characters and see them pop up and from the side. You know, they see the dialogue pop up when they see it. And that's how they like to engage with their content. They care a lot about the dialogue of their characters and the emotions and expressions. They'll pay, you know, $20, $30 for these packs of art that are all like one character with 80 different emotions. And sure, in person you could try to do this, but they really care. They connect with their character on that level, and they invest in their character like a lot of us invest in our dice that can, you know, match our character. And VTTs enable that. Even if you play in person, you can still benefit from, you know, some of this. You know, it is a really cool story moment when you take your last arrow and you take out that dragon with it, but it's really not very fun to have to actually track down how many arrows you have. It's far more fun to let the mechanics take care of themselves and get to what you're actually there to do. Play a game, tell a story, have cool memories that you tell your friends a year later. And you know, it doesn't just help players. GMs can, you know, more quickly set up and have something ready to go. 5e, you know, has a lot of rules on how to build an encounter. It can take a while. Some people just start guesstimating. But with software, you can, you know, a new module I've been working on lets you create from your world, look at all of your homebrew, all the things you purchased, and build an encounter in just like a minute or two just by clicking buttons, being like, I want celestials, I also want a couple beasts. You throw together an encounter, and now it's not so scary that your players went off your beaten story path. It's okay, you can just build something on the fly, you can keep going. The VTT is there to support you playing games. But you can still do it in person and benefit from a hybrid approach.
When you're talking about getting access to all of your homebrew and all of the stuff that already exists, and Max, you're kind of making a whole book of new homebrew with Heliana's Guide, and so I was curious what it looked like kind of setting up a Kickstarter that wound up being that successful, and what the fulfillment process looked like, and what the difference is between the print and the VTT version of it.
Well, one thing I really like about doing anything on the VTTs is you can set up the scenes beforehand, and that's let us kind of stole this from DM Dave, if any of you know him, but he does like 3 levels of adventure, and we were like, oh, that's amazing. You know, you want to run it at 2nd level, 8th level, or 16th, and so we have those set up, and you can just throw them in whenever you want. And then we've extended that to like all these random encounters. So, you know, just like you were saying, you can throw an encounter together. We've kind of got those ready, so you can just throw them in when your players do inevitably go off the rails and start going to that fair that you mentioned one time about 10 weeks ago. And then the thing that's actually affected how we're doing the book is the linked journal entries. So Plank down here, Adam, he's actually doing our Foundry conversion for Heliana's, and we were trying to make it, it's a big job. And we were trying to make it so, you're reading through and it mentions a monster, you can just click it and it takes you straight to that monster. So you're not having to flip through the book. And then that's changed how we're setting up the PDF in the book, because we want to have all those references in there to make it easy for you guys to do on the fly. So it has kind of changed how we're approaching it. And the other thing I like is we've done some handouts, right? We've got these clues for how to hunt these monsters. And they're physical, but then we have all these monsters we want to be able to show people. And on VTTs, you can do that at a click of a button. Here's what you're fighting. Here's this. Jess Jackdaw has done amazing art for our project, and being able to show that off like that is really cool. So that's kind of,
No, it's great seeing how successful Heliana's has been. And so one thing that I was curious about, because I know we're going to have some creators in the audience who may be looking to get started, I was curious, kind of for all of you as a group, what was it like getting started in the TTRPG space? Because you've all been able to make kind of full-time careers in this space. I'm curious what it was like getting started and how things have changed since you got started, and kind of what advice you might have for somebody looking to get started now.
it was tiring.
Still is. Doesn't get any easier.
No. It's a big commitment of time. You just got to make stuff and make it and put it through the fires of Reddit and take all the criticism and try and decipher who's being mean and who's been actually helpful. And yeah, and just keep improving. Right? How many maps did you make before you got?
Well, so I'm the map cartographer, and so I started in May last year.
What did that stand for?
MAD stood for map a day, because I was making a brand new map every day. And at the end of the month, I'm like, okay, I'm going to remove the map a day bit. I'm just going to stay as MAD because I'm going to burn out.
And also, he lost his shit.
Well, the thing is what a lot of people don't realize when they're making content or they want to start a Patreon or however they want to go about, you know, their business model, is that when you start to try and make money from it and make it a business, it isn't always about the content that you're making or how long it takes to make that content. There is so much other stuff outside of it that you don't even know about, that you won't even appreciate until you start doing it. So for me, it was like, I can make a map every day, that's no problem. Yeah, I'll be the map a day cartographer. But then I had to handle my own social media. Then when you start getting bigger and you're getting questions all the time, you have to answer all the emails. You want to build up a community with Discord. And these things just keep piling on top and piling on top. So you need to be really aware at the beginning of laying your stall out, what you want to do and how much time you can commit to it. Because if you want it to be a full-time job, realistically, you kind of need to approach it as it being a full-time job. You need to put in those hours, which is the most difficult thing. The thing that a lot of us creators throw around is that content is king. The more content that you make, the more you have to share, the more people can see your stuff. If you're only putting out a handful of things in a month, you're going to get buried against everybody else because everybody's trying to do the same thing. It's like it's a hustle all the time. So just be mindful of what you want to do, because I think all of us up here know how fortunate we are that we are able to do this as our full-time job in this industry. And so everybody kind of wants a piece of that. You know, we'd all love to be able to make money from our hobby and do something that we love, but you also need to make sure that you're not going to overextend yourself and don't lose the passion for it. You know, focus on just making something that you love doing first. And if you can make some money from it, great.
And I'd also add that everyone's really nice. So if you do want to make something and send it to Alex or Griffin's Saddlebag or anyone, they're probably going to look at it and be like, dude, yeah, this is cool. And you know, do that enough times, build up a portfolio, they might even be like, do you want to write this for me? And yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it, just keep doing it.
That was definitely the experience that it is a rising tide lifts all ships. That is what we always say, right? You wouldn't believe how much there is a lack of competition between all the creators. When you're outside of that bubble that we all find ourselves in, when I was starting out, I was like, okay, I'm the mad cartographer, I'm new. Okay, God, I'm going to be competing against Tom Kartos and Shapeku, and that's how you pronounce it, because you probably don't know. It's Shapeku. And you're kind of thinking, right, okay, I need to do this. How do I beat them? And how do I make more money than them? And then you find yourselves invited to this Discord like we were, and it feels like you've gone backstage at a rock concert, and you see this list of people, you're like, oh my God, I've got 2-minute tabletop in there. You know, there's all these like crazy people in there, you're like, I'm part of this now, and everybody just wants to help you. And it isn't competitive at all, other than the fact that it is just by the very nature of you're all putting out the same content. So it's, do stuff, focus on it, be good, you know, put your heart and soul into it, show that you're making an effort, and you'll find that you'll get creators reaching out to you saying, I'd love to work with you. You know, I do stuff and I'd like to, you know, kind of help leverage that and help you out a little bit.
Alex especially.
I do what I can.
I really liked something, Max, that you said before about, you know, challenging yourself to always get better, because you're not going to be doing your best work when you first start. And knowing that and being comfortable with it, I think, is important. But one of the things that's been really exciting and sort of refreshing to me to see with this burgeoning industry of digital content creators is that it's kind of breaking the old models of like, you get one chance to publish your thing. Like all of your work builds up to that final fulfillment when you ship your book, and then as soon as it goes out, you see all the typos, or, you feel like something's gone wrong and it wasn't the way you wanted to show your product. With all the digital creation that's happening, you get as many chances as you need to keep iterating and keep refining and making your content better over time. And I think that is starting to get a little bit away from, oh, there's a product that shows up on Kickstarter and then it's 3 years and then eventually there will be a book shipped to you. Because it lets creators get in front of customers faster, it lets you get feedback on what you're doing, it lets you get, iterate on what's working, what's not working, what do people respond to, what do they want more of, and you don't get a lot of that feedback in kind of classical publishing models, and that's something that's been really exciting for me to see with all of the digital creators that are showing up and doing amazing stuff.
And one thing that seems to come up consistently is like just how important it is to get noticed, which seems like a mixture of like time into it. But what platforms seem like the most helpful when you're getting started? Like, is it posting on Twitter? Is it Instagram? Is it Reddit? Is it joining Discord groups and trying to share stuff? Or
It's look. Just look. No, it's not going.
Well, to a degree it is, but it's the saying, the harder I work, the luckier I become. And it's definitely, I think, just out of curiosity, is there anybody here that doesn't use VTT? Hands? Okay, I've got a couple of people, okay. I think, kind of going to what you're saying, it is a trial by fire. It is, I would say, harder now than it was when COVID kicked in, because so many people's at-the-table games got shut down. People got pushed to VTT. I think it's kind of retained people because you see the benefits of VTT. If you're kind of like forced to use it, you go, wow, this like makes combat so much quicker.
Even if you go back to the table.
Even if you go back to the table, you just take it with you. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna, have my laptop and stuff still set up, and more people are kind of like using a lay flat TV now, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna have the maps on there because, anybody that watches Critical Role, it's like, okay, now we're gonna get to combat, I'm gonna pause for a few minutes while I come and bring it out, and then we're going to set it up. And this is people that have like got production, they've got people that have already set it up to the side. If you can do it in VTT, it doesn't stop the story. It's like, okay, this happens, and now we carry on. I kind of went off topic about what I think was something I wanted to say from before.
no, that fits perfectly. And I mean, for the price of one set of like 3D terrain, you can get all of y'all's maps and a whole bunch of other stuff and have access to way more content. And what you're saying about streaming is interesting. Like, Cody, I know you stream for the Pelgrane Press channel on Twitch. I'm curious what it's like using a VTT for streaming and how you can try to keep that engaging for players and people watching at the same time.
Yeah, so a lot of traditional streams, some are actual plays, it's the videos of people playing around the table, and often it's like, 4 to 6 hours for a stream, and they get through, 2 fights and, part of an adventure. We run about 2 hours a week, and we get through about 2 fights and part of an adventure, because we are there getting through combat quickly, getting to the next map just with a click. We have people spread out across maps at times and, doing splitting up. And the VTT lets me also show that from the player's perspective. So the stream is watching it from, as if they are a player. They see the party's view. They don't see that the monster's around the corner. They can be at, as engaged in the story as much as the viewer can be, rather than, seeing what the DM sees, or, seeing, this table and, pretending something's not there. And with the ambient audio and other features, you can really drive this immersive experience. You're not just watching people move minis around, you're hearing the water of a waterfall as you get closer to it because the tokens are approaching. You hear the growls of monsters as they take damage, and you can drive almost a cinematic experience just by all the features, and at pretty low cost to the GM. A lot of these things are automatic just by doing your prep ahead of time. And more creators are bundling this, which is awesome for me. I don't spend more than like an hour on prep for a 2-hour game, but we get through a lot of content with that, and it's because creators are making maps that are already pre-set up with lights and walls and sounds, and I don't have to worry that my players have wandered to the second floor. There's things there, and I can have a lot of content with not without a lot of prep, and that's a big win for me.
And one thing I'm curious about beyond streaming, kind of going to all of you, is there some moment that you've had while you were GMing or playing on a VTT where you just couldn't have done it in a pen and paper way to try to like drive home what special abilities you get when using VTT?
To promote one of our other Foundry staff members, Anathema runs a random modern game where I was a player, and we were being hunted by these creatures that, you know, were just terrifying. It was dark, we only had flashlights, and the Foundry was configured so that we only had this narrow cone of light in an otherwise very dark environment. And he was using audio and sending it only to certain players as we started hearing voices in our head, and we didn't know he was only sending it to some of us. So just like our characters, we were like, what was that? What was that noise? And someone's like, I didn't hear anything. And we were actually becoming paranoid, and like as real people. And you can never do that in you know, person. And it's still, that's one of those memories I'm just going to carry with me. That's how terrifying that actually was to me.
You like disconnecting and reconnecting on Discord, like, I didn't quite do it.
Yeah, I think I don't want to get too into it with the kind of stuff that I do, because the maps that I make with the Mad Cartographer, they can be quite complicated, and it would mean, if you don't use Foundry, then it would mean me explaining how the different modules and how the different features work and stuff like that. But we have things like rotating mazes and, you know, and movable walls, and the kind of like move the assets and things like that. That's about as simple as I'll go into. So we try to kind of make these creative maps, and I don't think that's necessarily the norm. I think people kind of like approach how complex their maps get from creator to creator. We kind of really went all in with what Foundry is capable of. But I would say, to strip it back and not just be me, the biggest thing that you can do on a VTT that you can't necessarily do at a table is your map can be any size. It's like you are limited to your playable space if you're playing at a table. You know, if you've been in the expo hall and you've got these the big, I've seen the big rollout maps where it's like on a big roll and you just kind of like keep expanding out. That's great because it kind of like moves along and you can kind of like move along with it. It's a really clever idea. But anything beyond that kind of product, you just need to have like, what, a ton of maps at one side, or in the case of Max, or, you know, even writing just a load of books and all this kind of other stuff. It just becomes really inconvenient with a VTT. If you want, like, you know, a 200 by 200 square map, then you have one. You know, if you don't need to worry about the space, and then, oh, you know, my table's this big, but then it means my players are all sat here with their character sheets. Just as a general thing, the VTT just, it opens your options a lot more.
And it acts as another memory feed, so you can just like, you don't have to remember the initiative, it's there, it's dealt with, all that sort of stuff.
One thing that I think is really powerful with VTT, and again, Max, you alluded to this with Heliana's, is that having access to all of the artwork from amazingly talented artists, like there's so many people creating incredible creature artwork, tokens, and it evokes a response in your players that is difficult to communicate just in words. I mean, I love playing, you know, theater of the mind at the table with people, but often the DM will be describing some challenge or some creature, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it, it's kind of terrible. But when you see on the screen this demon that's, you know, 4 times bigger than anybody in the party, and it's looming over you, and you're just like, oh, okay, this just got real. And if you have the miniatures, you know, if you have the arsenal of physical minis to do that, well, awesome, that's congratulations, that's wonderful, but we don't all have that, and I think having that portfolio of artwork to really impress upon your players the gravity or the tension of the situation is a lot easier with digital assets than it is, you know, in person otherwise. One other quick comment is, I think, Cody, you alluded to some of the cool things you can do with asymmetric information in a digital format. I think that's really powerful. I think having, secret messages that you can easily distribute, visual cues or text that you can show to one specific player but not others, audio cues, like you said, ways to, reduce some of the typical metagaming that often occurs at a table where you ask someone to roll a stealth check and, they see, oh, well, I rolled a 19 on stealth, so I'm just going to walk right in there. The knowledge that the player has that they've already sort of succeeded at the task, it sort of dispels some of the tension of the narrative moment. And in a VTT, you can resolve some of those checks without the player knowing how well they've done until the moment of truth where that roll is revealed. Those are types of things that can enhance the stakes, enhance the tension, enhance the engagement and the immersion of your players at the table.
And one thing I'm curious, because we've been talking a lot about like what it's like to play online and piping things to like specific players and everything like that, but how does it work if you're trying to do in-person play? Like if you wanted to use a VTT on a TV, like does everybody need to have a computer with them to be able to play, or?
That was a follow-up question to me, wasn't it?
Oh no, anybody who's played in person with a VTT.
So we had the pleasure of playing a couple in-person games this weekend with the community, and one of our intrepid community members brought a TV and we put it sort of face up on the table, and it was just sort of a big geek out fest, really, but it was great fun, and I think that's something that will be more and more common. I think there's a lot of people that have passion for bringing a hybrid experience of digital and physical to the table, because there's some things that digital does super well, and there's some things that digital just really can't replace. The tangible satisfaction of your clacky math rocks is one of those things that, like, it's really hard for digital to supplant that. And so, can we work together with, dice that you can roll in person, but then use the results of that roll in the software? Those are cool things that are kind of moving the ball forward in terms of what digital tools can do, and I think it's gonna continue to go in that direction with some really exciting products and integrations, and I think that's something that will change the way that a lot of games are played.
And there's a lot of really cool projects coming. Pixels Dice is a Bluetooth-enabled click-clack. You roll it and you can see it in app, or hopefully in Foundry one day. There is Game Board, which is like a 1 foot by 1 foot touchscreen tablet that you can go play your board games in, or they have a mobile app companion for that on-the-go table. Hang out in free plane, plop down a game board. Specifically for Foundry, there is an intrepid developer working on IR sensors. It's called Material Plane, and so you can attach these bases to your minis and move your minis around on the TV, and it will move in Foundry as well. And he's working on a pen so you can draw and figure out your distance, so you can really get that experience of the hybrid approach. And as we leave the pandemic, I really am excited to see all of these hybrid approaches. I don't think we have to leave behind VTT. We can have all the fun of in person, seeing each other's expressions, animating with your hands, hard to do online, while still having all the benefits of running smoother games and having access to far more cool content like what these guys are making.
And one thing that I'm curious about, talking about hopefully the near future in a post-pandemic situation, what are all of y'all working on for the near future, and what kind of new features can we expect, or just new stuff coming from y'all can we expect to try to run better games for our players?
I want to hit more senses. So we have a bard that's doing songs for the end of each adventure. After you kill the monster, he's written a song about it. Don't go too off the rails or the song won't make sense. But I was actually talking to someone just now, so we have cooking in Helianas, and they approached me and they were saying, I take fantasy foods and I make them into real recipes, kind of like the D&D did in their recent cookbook. So I'd really like to hit that taste and smell sense as well. And maybe once you finish the quest, you cook up an aboleth ice stew. Not sure how we'll do that. Probably not actualize it. Maybe draw it on an egg or something. And kind of hit every sense we can. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, in terms of what we do with the Mad Cartographer, and I say we because I am the original, but there's two of us now. I didn't know that you was going to use one of our maps when you put it up, but that wasn't my map, that was Stefan's. So so Stefan is the the co-creator now on Mad Cartographer. So for us, it's pretty much in terms of that business as usual. We've got ideals and aspirations of doing the Mad Astrographer as well. We'd like to branch out into some sci-fi maps. It's a very underrepresented genre, which is a shame because the capabilities of Foundry with that, like such things like, you know, if you've got a spaceship and you've got it all walled up, there's loads of corridors and you turn all the lighting off and you've got this flashing red light and you've got your token moving around and they've got a light source and it's a cone of vision, so it looks like they've got a torch. The things that you could do and that we've kind of seen people do, but not necessarily like bigger creators kind of trying to do it really often. I think that's what we would like to do at some point. But obviously, another big thing that I've been doing, and we've been here this weekend, we're doing a magazine that's going to be coming out in January, and we're looking to put it on Foundry. So that's kind of the big thing that we're going to do. It's going to be a monthly issue called Crucible Magazine. I'm not going to try and give the hard sell. I've been doing that enough this weekend. But yeah, we chose to make it the first 5e magazine for Foundry because we're going to have multiple adventures in it, and the way that Foundry's put together, like with the compendiums and the accessibility and having multiple maps, it's just so easy to kind of transition between all the content that's going to be in that.
And I think there's some new stuff coming for Foundry to support a bunch of different game systems, and other VTTs have like card support and things like that. What can we see coming there?
Yeah, sure. So we actually have a big new release coming very soon, hopefully next week. Many of you may already know, but it does include support for playing cards and systems that use cards as a core mechanic. That was one of the features that our software was kind of missing until now. It's really cool to have that added. We're also working on some exciting new techniques for storytelling, which has to do with the perception of the player. So many systems have, characters that are augmented with the ability to see in the dark or see, night vision goggles in like a cyberpunk setting. And so we're adding, in the future, we're going to be adding some different vision modes. It's very exciting, so that like different characters can perceive the world differently, and each player will have like an asymmetric view of the scene based on the capabilities of their vision. We already have a little bit of that, but we're going sort of way deeper on that, which is going to be really exciting. And yeah, I think the other part that's kind of on the playing the game side of things, in terms of like what can we do to empower content creators, building a lot better tools for bundling and packaging content, so that for folks like Alex and Max, it becomes much more seamless for them to build distributable experiences that they can do more and do faster and do better, and then have game masters who it's really easy for them to get that content loaded into their game world, so that they can have it available at the click of a button. And so, it's both about adding new tools that give storytelling options when you're playing the game, and adding new tools that make it easier to create content for giving you those options and giving you those experiences at your fingertips. And that's kind of why we were thinking about this panel as that sort of creative nexus, because it's really about both sides and bringing everything together, so that folks that are extremely talented when it comes to making content for platforms like ours, not just Foundry, but many different platforms, can do that more and better, and with sort of more exciting results for people at the table.
Yeah, and just saying, and this is the good thing about when you kind of make stuff with Foundry, that it becomes quite creative focused, and it takes the burden off us. It in turn means it takes the burden off the DMs that want to run our stuff. Like making their lives easier to run their games, it kind of like gets passed down, and we're all trying to make it easy for you to not have to worry about all the prep that you've got done. You just want to go and play, and you want to run a cool game, and you want to focus on making your own stories, and instead of having to worry about all the other stuff. So, and it's the good thing about the Foundry team. They are focused on, it's so multifaceted. You're focused on trying to keep the players happy, the player user base, the creator user base, the developer user base, and and it is a constantly moving and improving product, but it is already so full of features that it's mind-blowing.
A big takeaway from being here at this convention for the first time and seeing all these people and all this super cool physical goods is, man, I want these physical goods and I also want them virtually as well. Hybrid content like Crucible, where I can go, read the magazine on my flight back and then have it ready to go to play with the maps and items via the Foundry module, that's a big win. If we can work with creators and manufacturers and such, and you can go buy a mini and then have that token as well so you can represent it digitally, that'd be a big win. If buying cool dice and then having a virtual skin that matches it so I can roll it both in person and virtually, that'd be a big win. So I'd like to pursue more and more and enable more content creators to do this kind of thing as we go forward.
And I'm sure there's some folks out there in the audience who might have some questions. So if anybody wants to line up at either of the two microphones here, we can do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to do a quick series of lightning round questions for you guys if anybody wants to get in line and ask a question. So first off, this will be for all of y'all. What is the longest session you've ever GM'd or played?
48 hours. When I first started DMing, I was a co-DM, and it was 48 hours. We hardcored it. I think we broke for like an hour for food, like every so often, but no sleep. It was gross. But we were young. We were young, and it was easy then. Not so much.
I can't solve that. Like 5?
Yeah, like 4.
I had one that was around 12. It was an in-person game that folks managed to get together for, and we wanted to make the most of the opportunity, so we just sort of marathoned it all day. But digitally, I think probably I ran about 6.
That sounds good. And so we can go to the first question over here.
Hi. Originally I was playing an in-person game with my friends, and then when COVID hit, we did switch to Roll20 and virtual. And my husband was DMing, and he would spend hours on Roll20 just making maps. And we had to buy all this like extra content to like put certain things on the map. He enjoyed it for the most part, starting to learn to make better and better maps. But I'm sure he would have been happy to know about pre-made maps as well, as he was like, nobody likes my content enough for me to do all this work. Is there like subscription fees to these, or is it just available? Is there special content that's available through?
Sure, it's different from creator to creator. The majority of people that are making maps, they are throwing them through Patreon, which in itself is a subscription-based platform. You will either have people that do it as a monthly subscription, and you pay the tier price that you've decided you want to join, and you'll get X amount of content per month. Some other people do it as a pay-per-creation. Every time they release something new, then you pay for it. But in terms of Roll20, they've got a marketplace, so you would buy stuff there. The only problem with things with Roll20 is the dynamic content, you can't share it off Roll20. Like all the walling that I do for Foundry, I can distribute it through my Patreon. And then I get people saying, oh, does this work for Roll20? It's like, well, no, it doesn't. I would have to then go and make it again in Roll20. So there's that kind of problem, but a lot of the pre-built stuff for your chosen VTT, there's marketplaces, and there are more creators that will focus on providing that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
One quick bonus to that is that one thing I'm really proud of is that we've had amazing collaborations with a number of artists that all have kind of worked with us to make sampler packs of their maps available, and these packs are not trivial. Many of them have 20, 30, some even 50 different maps in them that are available completely for free. If you use our Foundry platform. And I think that gives you a great chance to find artists that really resonate with you and with your table. Because there's so many amazing people creating artwork, and they're all different styles, they're all different genres. Getting a chance to try those out and see how it's working, and then all of those artists have their own, their own subscriptions or their own programs, their own packs that they sell elsewhere, and you can sort of dabble to see what you like, and then see who you might want to support more to have sort of an ongoing channel of content.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with Roll20. For Roll20 dynamic content, it has to be on the marketplace, but like for me doing the Foundry stuff, I can sell it through Patreon and you can subscribe to me, but I can also, because we have the accessibility that the program allows with Foundry, I can also sell the stuff on my shop. So if you don't want to subscribe to somebody, a lot of creators, you go and buy the pack from their web shop, and as a one-off thing if you don't like subscriptions. So the VTT provides that flexibility for us as the creators and as you guys as the fans, the customers.
You can get our entire book on Foundry.
And then we'll go to the right side.
One thing I'd like to add also is that for Roll20, to kind of unlock most of the platform, you need to subscribe as like the master tier or whatever, but Foundry is a one-time purchase, and then you just just that wasn't meant to see it. It's good to know. It's worth checking out.
Do you want to come up here?
So I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say that from the content creator side, working with Max and just working through this whole thing for the last year and a half, Andrew and Cody, I wanted to thank you both for creating both a platform, but also fostering a community where everybody feels comfortable and you take the time to make sure everybody knows what to do, how to do it, who they can talk to, what kinds of things are possible, and it's made it easier for not only people new to the platform, but for people who are new to this whole concept. Even on the content creation side, someone totally new just jumped right in, and these guys have been amazing. They took time out of their busy weeks, more times than I can count, to check our stuff, give us feedback, help us polish and groom and make sure that everything's at the best level that it can be. And they didn't need to do that, but it winds up being better for everybody that they take the time to do that and teach new people how to get the most out of their platforms. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
We appreciate it.
We didn't pay him to say that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, it's really great to see also the community of content creators really supporting each other. It could easily be a case where different artists or different map makers feel like they're in competition with each other, and like once you learn a way of doing things, you don't want to share it, you want to kind of keep it, and we actually don't see that. We see creators helping each other to get started and sharing what they know. And that's amazing, and I think that speaks to the spirit of the community that we have.
We can go back over here to the left.
Coming from only Roll20, I did have a question about Foundry. Is there an indexing system when it comes to monsters and or playable characters for both the icons as well as the stat blocks of the individuals? Having to open 15 different windows to see the stats of each individual monster that is not connected to the actual token has been interesting. So I was just curious if, by any chance, you guys had any thoughts either improving that or if anything is built into Foundry that might be able to assist.
So Foundry has an index feature in that there are compendiums, so you can store all of your actors and items and such into like long-term storage is kind of what a compendium is. Other people, we have a huge community of developers who build things on top of our open API. There are like over 1,200 modules. I'm sure there's a module out there for your system that can show you your monsters and such in a quick index view without having to open all of them all the time. Drop by our Discord and ask around, and I'm sure someone can point you in the right direction. If it doesn't exist, it probably will in like another month.
Because you don't even need to have them all open. Like from Foundry, you just double click the token and it will open up the character sheet of whatever's on the thing. So you need it as you need it. You can like these like modules for popping out the window, so it doesn't have to necessarily clutter the scene or anything like that. So.
And in the meantime, we're doing lots of lists. So you want to CR1, we'll have all the CR1 things hyperlinked, you click it, it brings it up. And
Thank you. As someone who's in a campaign where in Roll20 the icons, the tokens don't even pull out half of the time, this seems like I might be looking into. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can go over here. So I do a hybrid game with a TV on my table. So my question to content creators is there anything you do or anything you'd like to do to try to optimize content for the hybrid experience? Because you do kind of lose some of the VTT features, like, yes, you could have an infinite map, but shifting it and then shifting your tokens is a little bit more work. So you do kind of want to anchor the size. Is there anything that any considerations that you have toward that?
I think that's going to be dependent on with what you've designed it for, because you will have people that make VTT maps and they don't limit themselves, and then you'll have people that make VTT maps for a screen. So they've made it specifically for that. I think that's just going to come down to the modules and the API and however that kind of ties in with Foundry, whether you can kind of lock stuff as it moves and it's going to kind of track it anyway. I don't know whether there's anything at our end that we could do to accommodate that as a map maker specifically. As much as we'd like to, it just becomes, how niche is it? We've all got X amount of hours for making the content that we do, and as much as we'd love to provide everything to all people, it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to do that, I think.
Quick comment. I think one thing that's really interesting is having an ecosystem that can respond quickly to what people want and what people are doing. We've seen tabletop gaming grow amazingly quickly over the past 2 years. There's been so many newcomers to the space, and hopefully as pandemic safety is getting better, there's going to be a lot of people returning to playing in person and a lot of people trying to bring that experience to their table. And that's going to create kind of an upsurge of users that want this type of experience. And where there's demand for creators to fill a certain need, there's going to be creators that step up to fill that need, because every creator needs to sort of establish a niche. Every creator needs something that differentiates themselves a little bit. And so I think as the way that people are using technology continues to evolve, and we are kind of at I wouldn't say the forefront, but this is still a relatively new way of playing games. I think as that continues to grow, there's going to be a lot of response in terms of technology solutions and artistic solutions to empower that mode of playing.
we can only fill those needs if we know what they are. So if you have some ideas, come and talk to me. Or Plank probably. He's my
And yeah, I think we would as well. I think the creative community in general, we do try to move with what people are after. We try to answer to the demand. If the demand is there, then people are going to make it, because, let's be real, as the creators, we're trying to make money. So if people want to do it and they want us to do it, then and we can do it, we're going to do it.
This is a question whose answer is probably going to change between both of you, because originally it's mainly just a question concerning Foundry. What's sort of the developmental process that goes behind deciding what to work on next, whether it be a core feature for Foundry, a new module to create, new maps, or new item sponsors or mechanics to work with the whatever system you're working with?
Thanks for the question. Let me jump in and take this, because one thing, so what we've been doing, and this is, I think, worked pretty well, although we are continuing to refine it, is every time we tackle a new version, we kind of ask ourselves 3 questions. There's things that the software needs at a kind of non-glamorous internal level in terms of strengthening the foundation, strengthening the underlying quote code, the infrastructure. No user is going to really say, oh, I want that. But it's so important, and so we always try and invest in a key sort of infrastructural enhancement with every release. We also think about what's a sort of user-facing feature each release that we think is the most important to add, and then we also collect a vote from our user community about what they are most excited about, and that kind of becomes the sort of 3 things that we try and focus on with a new release version. Now, scope creeps as scope does, and priorities shift as priorities shift, and you know, we don't always deliver exactly to spec, but that's kind of the way that we're thinking about it. We need to do the hard work to make sure that this software is performing really well. We know what we think is important to our vision of what the software should be, but then we also take feedback from the community about what people want. So I mentioned playing cards. We would have done this ourselves eventually, but playing cards were voted on by the community as like, this is the #1 thing that people want as the next big feature, and now they have it.